So I'd like to welcome you to Pietro's Ranieri Agency podcast number 4. In this series of podcasts, I'm trying to get an insight into how coronavirus is affecting businesses globally. And today I have an expert in the agency world. Today's guest, whom I'm really excited about having a chat with, is my very first mentor and boss in PR many, many years ago, Mr. Rob Da Costa. Rob founded and ran an agency back in the day called Communicating IT, which back then was a pure old school media-driven technology PR agency. For me personally, it was an incredible learning experience as I was the first employee and with the business until I left 7 to 8 years later. The agency became one of the leading technology PR agencies in the UK at the time, and it gave me an incredible insight and grounding into so many things that I still find useful today. So welcome, Rob.
Hey, how are you doing?
I'm good.
Well, strange question, really, given that we're all stuck inside. I keep sending emails that are saying, have a good weekend, and then go, oh, well, have as good a weekend as you possibly can do, stuck inside.
Yeah, well, it's definitely the same. I was saying to you earlier, I've got 2 kids here, and yeah, I do apologise in advance in case one of them does come in and demand something. I do try and keep that to a minimum. How are you coping with the hair situation as well? It's been a month now since.
I know. I'm gonna have to get the clippers out soon. God knows what I'm gonna look like. But I think I've got a number of skills. Haircuts definitely isn't one of them, so I have no idea what will happen. But
so, Rob, you founded, ran, and sold a successful PR agency. What are you up to now?
Well, so a bit of potted history, I suppose. So we started in 2002, and as you said, you were our first employee. I think you were actually with us 9 years, and then sold the agency in 2003. Did my 2-year prison sentence, as I like to call it, with the company that bought our agency, which, like for a lot of people, wasn't a very pleasant experience. Just because I went from being the master of my destiny to being part of a 2,000-man company, actually, globally. Left there after my 2 years and thought, what the hell am I going to do with the rest of my life? It was a really difficult time of my life. One of the things I always tell people who are thinking about selling their agencies is to know what you're going to do next, because if you get very fixated on that sale and without thinking about succession planning for you personally, it can be challenging. Anyway, the world collided for me a bit, and 2 very diverse parts of my life came together and say, hey, Rob, you'd be good at coaching. And when I explored what I really loved about CIT, and the thing I'm proudest of all those years later is how many people got their start, like you, Pietro, and how many people have gone on to do amazing things, and I think we had probably in total about 150 employees over the 11 years of running the agency, when you think about people who came and went. So anyway, so it was that whole helping people thing that inspired me to become a coach. So I spent a couple of years doing some training, and then in 2007 started Da Costa Coaching, which is what I do today, 14 years later. And so I work with agencies to help them grow in a profitable, sustainable and enjoyable way, which of course is particularly challenging right now.
Yeah. It's funny you say that. It's so 20 years on. Obviously you gave me my start, and like you say, lots of people in your agency have gone on to do bigger and better things, but I've had the similar experience with my agency now. So one of my very first, well, she's probably my first account manager, is now head of European PR for devices at Apple, I think. Wow. I see her quite regularly, actually. She gets the same train as me into London.
And you know what, the thing is, because we're not doing brain surgery or saving lives or anything, one of the best things about running your own business is employing people and seeing them flourish and giving them that kind of opportunity and that platform to grow. And then when they leave you, it's hard, but when you see years later what great things they've done, then you realize that is the real value of what we do.
Yeah, it's always baffled me a bit. I mean, in the early days, I used to get upset when employees left. But now I think when you've been through it a number of times, like you've been through it 150 times, because everyone always leaves in the end. You left in the end.
Even you, yeah.
You just have to recognise that you're actually just, you're a stepping stone to their next opportunity.
Yeah, it's just a life cycle, and you have to be, accepting of that and learn not to take it personally. It's usually definitely not personal. It's usually because they feel that they can progress by going somewhere else, earning more money, changing career, whatever that is. It's just part of the journey. And if you've done all you can to keep your staff and give them a great experience and a great environment, you can't do any more than that.
Yeah, no, well said, well said. So, you know, one of the reasons why I wanted you on this podcast today, to catch up because we haven't spoken for a while. It's always nice. But you know, you're obviously coaching now, and you're coaching and specialising within the kind of agency sort of model. And I guess you sort of see one-man bands through to much bigger agencies. With the Corona situation, I mean, how has that affected your clients? I mean, what are their sort of concerns right now?
I think we're still really, I mean, we are in week 3 or week 2 of the lockdown. So I think we are still really in the early days of finding out the bigger impact. I think we're still in this crisis mode. And I think in that crisis mode, everybody is waiting to see what their clients are doing. And that's having the impact on how they're behaving. What I feel like is that those clients who are being super value add and super consultative with their customers, those agencies who are doing that at the moment, are the ones who are going to do well out of this or survive this. And those agencies that are working at how they can pivot their offering, whether that be, you know, changing their offering or changing, you know, how they work with their clients, which obviously we're forced to do because we can't meet them, those are the ones that are doing well. And I obviously think it's interesting because obviously some clients, I've got a client who is a marketing agency that focuses on the event sector. So you can imagine, I've got a call with them next week actually, so we'll find out, but you can imagine their clients, they've lost every single client bar one. And the one client they've kept is their membership organization for events, which was one of their clients. But the others, of course, have all pulled out or paused things. But, you know, even to them, I'd be saying, right, guys, work out how you can pivot. So are you helping your clients get online? Are you helping your clients, you know, launch virtual events so that it doesn't look kind of like just this binary, we can run an event or we die. So I think those clients who are being really, really consultative and pivoting are the ones that are going to do okay. But I think it's early days. So I think, you know, ask me that question again in a month or two and we'll probably know more.
Yeah, I think there's going to be to add to that is there's a lot of agencies that are still trying to, I mean, you know, and not just marketing agencies, but agencies and other disciplines that are still trying to push things which we all know just aren't relevant. And it's, you know, especially in the current model, and it's just like they're trying to, you know, they're just trying to land grab and just trying to take money from people. And it's just, and I think
it's interesting because a couple of clients and a few people have asked me, do I think they should continue marketing themselves? And I can't write in bigger words the answer yes, with a but. And the but is that you have to do it with sensitivity and empathy. You absolutely, the now is the time to be marketing yourself, but you have to be also listening to your audience, understanding their real pains that they have now, and then marketing yourself to solve those pains, not just blindly marketing what you've always done. Because, I mean, it's interesting because I'm right in the middle of a launch and I can't really tell you whether this is going to be successful or not, but I run a group coaching program every year. And I've always, for the last 6 months, planned to launch it last Thursday, and the doors are open for a week for it. And I was in 6 minds, should I launch this or shouldn't I launch it? And I'm a member of a Slack group of agency owners. So I went to that group and I asked them, do you think I should still launch this or do you think I should delay? And I got massively polarized views. So I got literally 50% of people saying you should delay it. And then 50% of people saying, no, do it because people are going to need this kind of online support more than ever. So I've gone ahead and done it. Whether it's going to be a success, I really don't know at the moment. But so I'm saying to people, you should still market yourselves. The other thing I've found, this is not very scientific, it's just my own experience, is that because we're all working at home and we're all getting online like this, the social media world is getting really busy at the moment. Everybody's realizing, you know, I've run webinars, for example, for quite a long time, but now everybody's doing it. And the tech is in place to help us do that. But what I found is that I also do quite a lot of email marketing. And I've seen, and because I'm in this open phase of registration for my program, I've been doing a lot of emails like every single day. And I've seen open rates go up. and I've seen click-through rates go up, and those are the two metrics that you would always want to look at. And I think it's obviously because people have got more time to read that stuff, but also everyone's really focused on the whole social media world. But some of those more traditional marketing things like email marketing, which is never going to go away, which is still one of the most effective forms of marketing, is actually getting more engagement at the moment.
It might also be as simple as the fact that we're all just completely glued to our laptops and our screens now. So when we're in our office in London, I'm always kind of, going off to buy a coffee or having a face-to-face meeting with someone. But now, so even when I'm on, these vodcasts, for example, I mean, I've actually turned my email off now because I got told off because it kept binging with the sound through the vodcast. But
yeah, good plan.
Just in front of it all the time, and you look at it more than you have. So
don't you think that when we come out the other side of this, people are going to realise that they can work remotely, that people can be more productive working remotely, and that we probably should be. I've got a client who had this conversation with me this week, and they were like, they have a London office, and they were saying, I'm thinking of closing the office after this because we're actually working more effectively at the moment. And if we can put, slightly different structures, like more frequent, shorter communications with our teams in place, then actually working remotely is totally possible, and also means everybody can be more productive.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with you. I mean, the irony was with us, we're already set up to work remotely because people do tend to work from home if they're busy. So if they want to get their head down, they tend to go home rather than being, because when you're in the office, it's, coffee, someone cracks a joke.
Yeah, sure. Someone interrupts you. Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, so everyone was already set up. But yeah, I think moving forward, I don't know, it might be the opposite where nobody wants to work at home anymore because they're sick and tired of being at home.
Well, I reckon it'll be some hybrid thing. It'll be like, we've got office space that we can use that we're all going to come to one day a week, but we can actually work remotely. We'll perhaps be more flexible about working remotely. I just think it's interesting that, if there are any positive outcomes to come out of this, that's probably one of them.
Yeah. Well, you could have the sort of hybrid office approach where, I was thinking we could actually downsize our office in London because it's obviously it's in Oxford Street, so it's very expensive. It's great. It's a great, sort of selling tool for recruitment. So obviously people want to work in Soho and kind of all that stuff. But actually you probably could almost have a hot desking thing where people have just got somewhere to come into. They don't actually have their actual desk is at home, but this is more a pod for them to just come in and.
Yeah. And when we're talking about pivoting, things like serviced offices really need to figure that one out because obviously they're really hurting at the moment. So what can they do to provide value to their clients during this period, and how do they need to amend themselves accordingly post coronavirus? Because there's no doubt that they will all lose business afterwards because people will decide that, well, I actually don't need that expensive office. So they need to offer more flexibility.
Yeah, in the French office, we're in a WeWork, and in the UK, we're in a Spaces. And which is the Regis version. Both of them are being extremely difficult.
Are they really? That's
yeah. So the one in Paris, which is in Lafayette, it's a beautiful office, but they basically just shut the place down. So no one can even go in, and they're still trying to charge full rent for use. And they've been locked in Paris. Have been on lockdown for what, 5 or 6 weeks?
Yeah, it's such short-sighted kind of business practice because it's going to be a surefire way of losing clients when their contracts come up.
Exactly, and then in the UK here, they're just difficult here anyway. But it's for all sorts of reasons.
But I think I think we're probably in trouble a bit before this all happens. So they're definitely going to be struggling during and after this. They're probably just trying to get as much money as they can. It's like a lot of airlines. My other half works in travel, and a lot of airlines, basically, if you can't fly, they're not refunding your airfare. They're letting you defer it to another flight, because if they refund everybody, they'll all go bust. It's quite as simple as that. So they're saying you can fly within 2 years of your ticket, and I think every airline's doing that. So maybe that's what serviced offices are having to do as well.
They let you move your flight to when you can use it. It'd be very hard for them just to refund everyone's flights throughout the rest of the year and pay salaries and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah.
So at the moment, what sort of, I mean, have you got sort of 2 or 3 bits of advice that you could give an agency right now to try and navigate this situation? What do you think the sort of 2 or 3 key things they should be thinking about are?
I think the first thing they have to do is go and talk to all their clients. Anyone that's burying their head in the sand, hoping that the client will just carry on working on the retainer or the project they've been on without actually addressing it head on, is probably silly. That's not a good approach. So the first thing I would say is go and talk to your clients and listen to them. We need to be really good listeners at the moment. The second thing I would say is that more than ever, we need to be very consultative. So we need to be, because our clients are looking at us to help advise them on how to navigate this. Not that we are any more expert than them particularly, but we have an external view. So I think, we need to listen, we need to be consultative, we need to help our clients pivot, and we need to pivot if necessary. And we need to offer true value. So like you said earlier, if people are just blindly trying to flog the same things that they did before, when people don't want to, I've written before, I wrote a blog years ago that said, are you selling painkillers or vitamin pills to your clients? And it was a blog that did really well. And I sort of re-updated it a bit for coronavirus because it seems more apt than ever. So if your client's got a headache, are you selling them a vitamin pill that will be really good for them and it probably stop them having a headache in the future? Or are you selling them a painkiller that will get rid of their pain right now and get rid of their headache? Because I'll tell you what, right now our clients want painkillers. They don't want vitamin pills. And I think too many agencies are selling vitamin pills. So I think at the moment, you need to listen to your clients and make sure what you're selling is actually curing one of their, if you can support to cure one of their top 3 pains, then you should be. That's certainly what I'm trying to do. And this is my 4th point. So I've got 4 for the price of 3. The 4th thing I think is don't discount your services, but offer more or offer different services. So I'll give you a quick story. Hopefully they won't watch this, but I have a current client who is a PR company, and they just won a new client just before coronavirus kicked off. And obviously they were worried that the new client wouldn't start or would end after 1 month. So they went to that client and said, I'll tell you what, we will do the first 6 months work at a third of the retainer fee. And we'll put in writing that at the end of 6 months, you will go back up to the full retainer fee. And I said, I think that's a really bad idea, because the client will get very used to getting a certain level of service for a certain fee. And at the 6 month point, they won't want to pay 2/3 more for the same level of service. They'll either expect you to do 2/3 more service, or they'll just say no. So I said, look, you're better off renegotiating the whole thing and offering something different during this uncertain period so that you stay connected with them. And then you go back, you renegotiate the contract at the 6 month period. So I don't think people should be discounting at the moment. I think if you're going to do anything more, add more value and think about how you can serve your clients differently.
Yeah. No, well, I'm obviously a chip off the old block then. So I've got 3 examples of those things we're doing at the moment, which I'll share.
Good for you. Yeah,
so
go for it.
You say listen, our P&L documents have all got, the first thing we did was put them all into a traffic light system. So red, amber and green. And after conversations with the clients and their kind of regular calls, we just put in well, should we worry about this client, but then we've already had the budget conversations and everything staying as it is. Or, are these guys not able to sell, so they're suddenly an amber because they're at risk? So it just gives you like the visibility of, right, what, where is the business right now? What could happen, worst case scenario in terms of revenue?
Yeah.
The consult thing, we set up a division. Well, we basically set up an opportunity for clients to have it, a one-to-one with someone in the agency to just basically talk through all their current marketing activities for the rest of the year. So anything that's face-to-face, how do we, approach that, and what's the best approach for them? The discount thing as well. Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, one client in particular, they've basically not been able to pay. They've not been able to sell anything since the coronavirus because their online commerce thing just dried up because of Amazon reprioritizing. And what we did was they wanted to kind of pause for 3 months, but we ended up just kind of saying, look, we'll keep your team in place. We'll be reactive. So any journalist or, influencer that comes in and, has a request, we'll manage that request for you until this time is over with, because they've been a client for, a number of years. So we're supporting them through the time, but then as soon as it kind of goes back to normal, the service will resume at fee again, and not. So at the moment, we're just kind of, holding fort for them.
So I think that is that's another thing I would say, is that if you do have clients that are totally pausing work with you, you need to find a way of still adding value to those people without obviously providing your paid for service, so that when things get better, they haven't forgotten you. And I know that sounds silly, but I always say to clients, look, when you're engaging with your prospects, it's like refilling a sand timer. And if you don't re-engage with that prospect before the sand timer runs out, they forget about you, because, and then you bump into them one day and they say, oh, we just hired a PR agency. We should have thought of you, but we didn't. So, it's the same with clients. So if we have got clients, like I've got a couple of clients that are pausing things with me, and it's like, okay, so one of the things I'm doing at the moment is I'm shooting a weekly sort of down and dirty video of like, these are Rob's thoughts for the week, and this is, some stuff that I'm seeing and hearing, and this is what I think you should be doing. And I'm just sending this sort of down and dirty video to my clients every week, regardless of what they're doing with me at the moment, because I just want to keep adding value. But what I don't want to do is offer my service for free.
Yeah, well, no, I learned that from you, actually. That's, I'd rather reduce the fee and the service, but keep in touch with the client, ready to re-engage properly. It's better to send an invoice for £1 and carry on talking to them and doing very little amount of work than having to re-win the work 3 months, 6 months later. Because, like you say, it's a completely new discussion. You're suddenly in a pitch process, then trying to win the work back. So,
and it's hard. I think when you're the incumbent agency in that situation, it's probably quite hard to win, because they know what your track record is. They don't know whether the promises that all the other agencies are making are true or just a load of bull, really.
But there's different reasons. I mean, if a company has generally got, an issue with something, and, I'd rather they, reduce the fee than got behind with payments. And I think, I've been, like yourself, I'm doing this a long time, and the companies that, suddenly they start to slip with payment and still tell you everything's all right,
Yeah, your alarm bell should be raised.
But, the ones you respect are the ones that say, look, we're going to have to reduce because we've got a tight cash flow situation at the moment, but as soon as that's over, it goes back up. And they do that, and they respect their word. You want to work with them more at the end of it, because they're honest with you, and that's all you ask from anybody.
Yeah, and you know what? If you have I know this is a bit of a cliche, but if you have a partner-partner relationship with your clients, you're much more likely to hear that. If you have this unequal supplier-customer type relationship, then that's when they start, you're at the bottom of the food chain there, and that's when they either cut things without even communicating with you, or they're not honest with you.
Yeah, cool. So, I'm obviously a firm believer in having a mentor or a coach. I was obviously schooled by, one of the best, Rob. Someone, because obviously you need someone who can question you and ask you the right questions about yourself. If you're a mentor to a business, ask the right questions about the business. But, why do you think that, mentors or coaches are important, especially at the moment?
Well, I think we should all have a mentor or coach in our life somewhere. I'm still I'm old now and grey, and I'm still part of a coaching program, an American coaching program. So I have a coach that works with me with some of the things I do. I feel like for agency owners particularly, it doesn't matter whether you are a one-man band or you're running a big agency, it's still lonely at the top. And you still don't always have that peer group that you can bounce ideas off, and that help you make decisions with clarity and confidence and perspective and objectivity. So I think we need that more than ever at the moment. I think now we're working at home, it's definitely lonely. So having someone who can, give you advice, can be a coach, consultant, shoulder to cry on, advisor, and everything in between, because I think that's what we should be, then I think that's really important. I also think that for agency owners, having someone that you're accountable with is really important. Like, I see a lot of my clients either fortnightly or monthly, and they'll always go, oh, I'm seeing Rob next week, I better make sure I've done the things that I agreed with him I would do, because they know I'm going to give them some tough love if they don't do that, because it's no skin off my nose, but obviously they won't move their agencies forward. So I think that accountability, if you ask my clients, would definitely be one of the reasons why they hire a coach. And I think just that confidence that I'm making the right decisions. And at the moment, I'm not a guru or a crystal ball gazer, so I don't know any more than anybody else about where we're at or what the future is, but there are certain things that we've already talked about that I know people should be doing, and if they don't have someone to talk to about that stuff, then they might be making bad decisions right now. So they've got to keep moving forward. I've been running a series of webinars this week, and I had to rewrite the webinar quite quickly because of coronavirus, and part of the webinar is talking about vision. And I'm saying to people, look guys, I know you're all going to be very focused on short-term plans, but you still need to have half an eye on the vision for your agency. Otherwise, when you come out of this, you're going to flounder and you will get left behind, because there will be those agencies that have a vision. So it's just kind of having someone that can help you do that can kind of metaphorically grab you by the scruff of the neck and hold you up high so that you can get a perspective and see the wood for the trees, I think is really important.
Yeah, that's another thing I learned from you as well, actually, just about looking at the bigger picture. I mean, it's very easy for agency owners to focus on things that are in the moment. So, it's like you lose a client, at that particular time, you haven't got much cash in the bank because you're in that kind of cycle of, you just paid all your bills, but your payments haven't come in. And you can be very focused on just the negative stuff that's going on right there and right now. But actually, when you sort of take a step back and look at your cash flow over a year, and then all the prospects you've got in place, and actually, now is the right time to be hiring that right person for this, for this sort of next growth phase. That's the kind of thing to do. And it's very, like I say, it's very easy to get caught up in the moment and just worry about, I think you called it catastrophic planning when you were asleep at night.
Probably, yeah. It's that catastrophic thinking. But the thing is, it's a naff cliche, but it is so true. It's like we spend too much time working in our businesses and not enough time working on our businesses. And coaching helps you. It makes you put the pause button on and makes you work on your business for a period of time. I think more than ever at the moment, we have actually got time to work on our businesses. It's just people aren't always sure about what they should be doing. My experience is that if you were to do some analysis about why agency owners or business owners in general don't spend enough time working on their business, it's because they don't know what to do. So if there's so many things they could do, they don't know what to prioritize, and that's where coaching, mentoring, non-exec director, all that stuff, that's where it all comes in.
Yeah, no, well, I definitely believe it. So bit of a fun question here. So if we had to wind back the clock to, I'm an account exec working for you again, and we're at Stowcastle Business Park. By the way, I went past the other day and our old office is now a nail bar.
Is it? Oh my God. Good times.
Yeah. So if we had to work from home and we were 20 years ago, do you think we could do it? Because bear in mind, I think when I started, it was a Mac Power PC, which took, I don't know, I had time to make a coffee, go and walk your dog by the time it booted up in the morning.
Do you know what? I do some training with agencies, and I say, I've got one particular client I do some training with, and they're all sort of millennials. And I say to them, do you realize that we used to stop and print 100 press releases off and stuff them in an envelope and put them through the franking machine? And then someone said, hey Rob, what's a franking machine? I'm like, oh my God, I'm old.
You only got a franking machine after I'd worn my tongue out on stamps. You
certainly couldn't be licking stamps now, could you? So I think the answer is probably it would be really difficult, because I'm not even sure whether the technology existed for us to pick up a phone and do a conference call like with a group of us. So I'm not even sure whether we could have done that. I think times were much simpler. I think we would have to have really different systems in place to cope with this, because we couldn't do video conferencing like this. I mean, if you want to have a team meeting with your team today, it would be pretty easy to say, right, guys, all get on Zoom at this time. I'm going to have a team meeting. Back then we couldn't do that. So I think it would have been really difficult. I think we would have been on the phone a lot, but it would have been really difficult.
Yeah, I must say there was when I first started, I remember you had a CompuServe email, but you never got any emails because you're the only one that had one.
I know. And you had your dial-up modem to log on.
Yeah.
It's funny, isn't it? It wasn't very long ago, but it's funny how the world's changed. We had a fax machine.
Yeah, told off as well for not changing the I think it was a D2 raid drive or something that backed everything up with one of our clients, actually, Retrospect, Dance at the time.
Yeah, yeah.
But I always used to forget to change the hard drive, the tape drive or whatever it was. And
Amazing.
Yeah,
I think it would be really difficult, because I think the other thing is, if we had been told quite quickly, like we have, you can't go to your office, then we would just have not had access to files, whereas now everything's online. Back then it wasn't. So I think unless we could literally have gone to the office and grabbed everything and brought it home, it would have been really difficult.
But there weren't even really were there even laptops then?
I think there were laptops, but we didn't use them, did we?
No.
So I think actually, the more we talk this through, I think it would have been, if this had happened 20 years ago, it would have been pretty much a disaster for everybody. I think the government would have had to handle it differently, because they couldn't just say, right, you can't go into your office.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing is that I think things moved a lot slower back then. I mean, I remember, now when we've got kind of, I don't know, a client does a news piece or announces something, they are literally, 10 minutes later asking us where the coverage is. Has it appeared on this site yet? But back then, you used to be able to send a press release out and then take a holiday for 6 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, the world was, on the positive side, the world was much simpler and more straightforward, and there were way less channels to reach your target audience than there are now. So it's pros and cons. But I think in terms of working remotely, we would have struggled.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, no one would have asked in those days, can I work at home today? Not because we would have been mean and said no, but because it just wasn't on anyone's radar, because it wasn't possible.
Yeah. Well, you just wouldn't have. I mean, I think probably even up to a couple of years ago, it was still, I don't know, there was still kind of, when someone works at home, I don't know, it's still not 100% kind of resistant free. I mean, you would almost kind of question, well, if this person was asking to work at home, that would be absolutely fine, because that person's going to get on with work and they're very in touch with you. This person, you would, because maybe they work a different way and they're not so kind of in touch, you kind of worry about, well, are they going to be working? And that's not because they wouldn't be working, but you just sort of still have that.
Yeah, I mean, well, we still have to earn the trust to have the right to do that. But I suppose in a way, with what's going on at the moment, the idea of 9 to 5 has gone out the window a bit. I mean, I've been working longer than ever, I don't really know why, but because I've been getting out of bed and, I always work at home anyway, but I've been getting out of bed and I'm at desk by 7 o'clock in the morning. Yeah. And the last few weekends I've been working as well, because there's not much to do. Yeah. And I've had stuff I could do. And I love what I do. So it's, it's not difficult, but yeah, I don't think I think we would have struggled 20 years ago. I think it's bad enough now, but go back 20 years and we would have struggled. Maybe we'd have had some different solutions, but I don't know really.
Well, this situation is exactly the reason why Ranieri Agency ended up becoming Ranieri Agency, because like I say, when I left CIT, I went to just do freelance work, but they ended up working at home. And after 2 years of working at home, I realized I was just becoming detached from the rest of the world. I was getting up late. I was kind of not getting dressed, and you realize that people were coming home from their working day, my neighbors, and I was still in like my sleep room here. I won't say it was just like, I wasn't
your Superman PJs.
Yeah, my Incredible Hulk pajamas. But it wasn't because I wasn't working, but my clients, even back then, were becoming sort of US based. So they were coming online later. And so, my work would then started to creep into the evening. And then you suddenly realize, you don't have that sort of separation between work and home. So your laptop's there, every time you hear it ping, an email's come in, and whether you were, downstairs watching TV, you suddenly feel the urge to go up and answer it, which is...
I think it's a whole different topic, but if you do work at home, you have to get certain boundaries in place. Yeah. I have a thing that I love that I always tell people to use, which I have a morning ritual and an evening ritual, and it's my way of, so I start my day exactly the same and I end my day when I'm working at home exactly the same. And that is my leaving work thing. And one of the things I'll often do is, because I do get dressed for work, So I'll often, when I finish work in my office and I go up to the bedroom, I'll change, because that's a kind of a mental way of getting out of work. So a whole different topic, but if you are working at home, you have to have good boundaries. You have to be really clear when you're at work and when you're not at work. And if you're fortunate enough, like me, to have an office, then you can literally shut the door and finish work. But we all got to get used to it, because it's the world we live in, and it could be the world like this for the next God knows how long. So
yeah, well, I think to a certain extent, hopefully it won't be locked down like 100% like this for too long, but there's definitely going to be some further restrictions, I think, which you've all just got to get used to. So
yeah,
so
exactly.
do you think, having spanned, I guess, the pre-digital and the fully digital sort of eras now, and that doesn't mean you're old, Rob, that just it's happened in that short space of time. Do you think
yeah.
I remember
30 years nearly, 28 years.
Yeah, you've got, a few years on me.
I've certainly got the grey hairs on you.
Yeah. I mean, I remember when I started with you, I mean, PR agencies back then, I guess, compared to that, compared to what they are now, it was a much more straightforward business.
Yeah, you think about it. Back then, there were fundamentally, in the tech space, there were two channels to market. There was the print media, and there was the analyst community, and that was it. There was no social media, no LinkedIn, none of that stuff. So it was very straightforward. Like you said, it was much slower. You sent stuff in the post. And to some extent, the relationships with the media stand today. You still wouldn't, the things that we would say don't do, I'd still say don't do. Like, you don't send a press release and then follow up with a journalist to find out whether they received the press release. I think we would have said that back in our CIT days, and I'd say that today. So I think the world was much simpler, and I think that enabled you to build really good relationships with some people. I think today the world is much noisier and, like you say, much faster. The channels to market are really different. Now we've got social media, we've got a whole raft of sort of bloggers and vlogger journalists that some of us want to engage with. We've got the influencers that we want to engage with, the analysts, the print media, the online media. So it's a much crazier world, much more fast moving, but also that presents more opportunities for you to get your clients in front of the different audiences. So I think it's a more sophisticated today. It's faster moving, but fundamentally, when you strip it away, the same. I'm sure you say some of exactly the same things to your team that we would have said back in the 90s. So I think fundamentally it's not that different, but it is different, like I say, slower pace of life. It took us a lot longer to do things than it does now. Yeah. And that's both good and bad, really.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. The only thing I just do try and get across to the people that work around the area, I think that some of that skill that we had in the old days, which was that sort of, the personal skills, the one-to-one skills that you had to build, that was absolutely the number one essential thing you had to do. So, if you wanted to get coverage for your client, you had to have a good relationship with all the journalists, and that meant investing the time in getting to know them, going to see them, having a few drinks with them, really building those relationships. And I
Definitely.
think because the comms industry has got so busy with activity, so like you say, you could do media, social content, influencer communications. Everything is potentially a lot more sort of transactional based now, especially with influencers. People have kind of started to, I think, lose that skill because they do.
I also think, without insulting any of your audience, I don't know, I feel like part of the issue is the millennial generation. I feel like I have this conversation a lot with clients where they have people in their 20s who want to hide behind email because that's how they're used to communicating through an electronic medium of Instagram or Facebook or whatever the latest thing is, an email. And, us older fuddy-duddies want people to go and talk to people, even if that's picking up the phone. People still seem more resistant about that now. But I think there's three things that are really still true. You've got to be good at building relationships. You've got to understand how to sell a story, and you've got to be a good writer.
Yeah.
And those three things stood well. They were so true back in the 90s, and they're still true today, aren't they?
100%. I mean, I think, the millennials are much more set up to be able to cope with the way the world works these days because they've been brought up in that world. They're used to kind of multitasking across all these different platforms. Well, I actually think they could stand out, you know, from the rest of the crowd. Sorry, my phone.
Oh, you haven't turned something off. Hello. Hello.
Let's go.
Chinese takeaway
actually on there, so I can't delete it. I think someone's got. Yeah, but they, you know, they're much more. The millennials are much more set up to kind of deal with this kind of multitasking comms program.
Yeah,
but I actually think the ones that could stand out if they learn that old school kind of, you know, face-to-face relationship building, being able to sell a story to someone that they know, and they, you know, I think they would become you know, they would basically stand out from the crowd, you know, because there are, you know, a plethora of, you know, millennial comms people that all do a very similar job, and they kind of I'd hate to say they're interchangeable, but they could almost
be exactly. I think the other skill that I see a lot of account managers, senior account managers, account directors even lacking is the ability to upsell. You know, they don't necessarily see selling new business to existing clients necessarily as part of their role. And of course it should be, once you get a bit more senior in an agency, they should have a business development aspect to their role. Well, they don't have to, but a lot of agencies want people to, when they're like a senior account director, account director or whatever, and they struggle to do that. And often I hear the excuse was, I'm just too busy delivering the client work. So, I mean, I'm not trying to diss everybody. I'm just trying to make that comparison between the old days and the new days.
The way I look at that within my own agency is I just think that comes, you know, I think the responsibility can also be put at the line manager or the mentor's door, because, you know, if upselling doesn't come naturally, I mean, I remember, you know, obviously, you know, you had a partner back then, Andrew, and one thing I learned from him, I think, was more probably like the face-to-face sales side, because, you know, he was a great salesman. You know, you can't argue with that. And
no, he was, yeah,
you know,
still is.
Yeah, and you know, you know, my probably skill within the agency, even to this day, is I'm probably the guy that, you know, networks and does the sort of opens the doors, and that I can trace all that back, you know, to that sort of mentoring. So
yeah, definitely.
People, you know, they're not upselling on accounts. You know, you do have to ask questions. Have they been mentored correctly?
I completely agree with you, and it's really interesting that a lot of agency owners think as someone moves up through the ranks, they will naturally have those skills or management skills. And of course, that is not true at all. We absolutely, if we wanted someone to be able to, I don't know, program with, you know, use Photoshop, we would teach them how to use Photoshop. But we don't do the same thing with some kind of skills like management skills or sales skills. And yet we should be investing in that with people, and not just assuming that as they move up for the ranks, they naturally have those skills, because they don't. Just because you did or I did doesn't mean they will.
I think people have natural aptitudes for things, and they do tend to, you know, do those things more.
Yeah, gravitate to them. Yeah, of course.
But, you know, like say, if people want to move up the scale and they want to become, you know, an account director, senior account director, maybe even MD one day, you know, they have to realize they have to be able to, you know, they have to do all these things, and they all have to be able to mentor people to do these things, because again, the more higher up you go, the less you actually do, the more you mentor and the more you kind of manage. So
absolutely. Yeah. You should be enabling everyone else to be fantastic at their job.
Yeah. So look, Rob, we could, I'm sure we could talk all day. I know you're a busy man. You've got a new service to launch.
Yeah, too.
But yeah, look, I just want to thank you for your time today. It's been really, you know, really interesting to talk to you again. And
my pleasure.
Invite me back onto your podcast.
Definitely, the Agency Accelerator. I'll be dropping you an email today to get you scheduled in.
Yeah, you can use me as the case study for all the things that you shouldn't do.
No, I think people will be really interested to hear your journey. That's like you've been asking me mine. I think people, you know, my podcast's aimed at agency owners, and I think you're a really great example of a great success story with a number of twists and turns along the way. And so I think that's what people are interested in. You know, none of us, you, me, anybody, can get where they have got to without making loads of errors and mistakes along the way. And it's those things that enable us to move to the next level, really.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. I think there's a lot of things that people don't do a lot of things because they fear failure, and but that in itself is the reason why you'll never succeed. So
Totally. Yep. I
take
completely
those
agree.
risks sometimes. You also have to, I think it may have even been you again that taught me this, but you have to listen to people's advice. But at the end of the day, you've got to decide to do it yourself, whether you agree with their advice or not. You should be informed, but you should also stick to your guns. I mean, when I wanted to leave CIT, I remember my mum, asking me, could I afford the petrol if I left the, CIT? And I was like, what? But she was kind of, I think when you take advice from people to do something, you need to take advice from people who've done it.
And you know what, that's so important. So if you are ever choosing a coach or a mentor, you have to find someone that you are on a similar wavelength with, that you trust implicitly, that they've got your back, but they will be tough with you if they need to, because they've got your best intentions at heart. I think it's worth saying, like, you were with us for 9 years. Imagine most agencies now having staff for 9 years. It's just, it doesn't exist. In fact, you and Lloyd, who was our employee number 2, have both gone on to run your own agencies, and quite a few people, because Hayley runs her own agency, if you remember her, and Emmeline and all those guys. So that's, it's fantastic.
Because I do think in the early days, I know we're going to finish in a second, because I know we could talk all day, but I do think that if you've learned, my first job with you was when you're in a sort of almost startup position. And I think that's just the way we were used to working. So we just it doesn't scare us, because we've not walked into an office that had 200 people and, you have to work your way up the ladder to get success. We learned with you and Andrew that you had to go out and take it. You have to go and earn it. And I think that's the difference. I mean, I think I was lucky enough to join you when you were in that phase. So that's the way I think. That's the way I was meant to. So
I think naive, innocent youth was on our side in those days. Like, we just didn't know what we didn't know. So we just went on and did it. And, sometimes people say, God, that was really brave. And I was like, well, it didn't feel brave at the time. It just felt like that's what you did. So, and the older you get, the more you learn, and perhaps that stops you getting out of your comfort zone. But we've got to keep stepping outside our comfort zone if we want to keep growing and learning.
Yeah, definitely.
So you're old and crying.
Yeah, I think well, you still look the same, Rob. So
thanks. I got the faded look on the camera. Hide the wrinkles.
I want to again thank you for your time. Let's stay in touch, and I'll let me know when you want me to get on your podcast.
I certainly will do. Yeah, great speaking to you again. Cheers.